Hey, everybody, and welcome to a bonus episode of How I Built It, the podcast that asks, how did you build that? We're currently in between seasons right now, but that doesn't mean that the episodes have to stop. You'll get 2 bonus episodes before season 7 happens, and this first one covers my favorite trade secrets from season 6. I'll go over the 3 biggest takeaways from the first half of the year and what we can look forward to in season 7. So let's get started. The first piece of advice I got is a good one. It is far and away the advice that came up the most as far as trade secrets go, and that is listen to your customers. Natalie Lucier was the first to mention it this season, and she made an important distinction. Listen to how they are using the product, and don't just take what they're saying at face value. As you know, that people will reach out and say, hey, you know what your product should do? This exact thing that I needed to do. That's not what she's saying here. She's saying that you should observe how people are using your product and services. Similar ideas were echoed by Mike McDermott of FreshBooks, who put a big importance on customer service. Yuri Popov and Steph Scappa said the same things. They all talked about how being open to customer feedback made their products better. So trade secret number 1 for 2019, listen to your customers. It will improve your product. As for trade secret number 2, I think something that goes hand in hand with listen to your customers is that second biggest trade secret. Get the product out there as fast as possible. Jan Thielemann, Andre Gagnon, and James Kemp all said this in one way or another. I think Andre probably put it most succinctly when he said done is better than perfect. The general thought is to get a minimum viable product, or MVP, out there as fast as possible, and then start listening to the people who use it. Ultimately, you can't predict how people are going to use what you'll offer, and it could be very different from how you envisioned it. So again, the way you have product use in mind could be very different from the way that people actually use your product. A perfect example for me is my online courses. I created them with the focus of a single individual who wanted to learn how to do X, something. I want to learn HTML and CSS. I want to learn how to use Beaver Builder. I want to learn how to make a podcast. And that is how I designed them, and that's how I priced them. But I learned pretty quickly that organizations wanted to license them for use internally and with their customers. So I had to come up with a completely separate business model and system for that. Right now, if you go to creatorcourses.com, a person can register the course and then take it through LearnDash. But I had to set up a completely separate system for licensing the videos. And it worked out because licensing my courses was a big income driver for me in 2018. So now I keep that in mind when I create courses, but I never would have known that if I had kind of tried to think of every angle and create these huge courses instead of just getting it out as soon as possible. And again, I wouldn't have come to that conclusion if I hadn't listened to my customers. So trade secret number 2 for 2019 is release your minimum viable product as fast as possible. Now, the last trade secret that came from season 6 is a bit of an amalgamation of several tips that I got from guests, and it's to connect with people. So Laura Elizabeth mentioned this in some instances where she connected with her users before releasing her course. Brennan Dunn tells us to get involved in the community by going to an in-person event. Lindsay Miller echoes the importance of going to an in-person event by talking about how great the WordPress community is. And then Brad Tenard offers similar advice in a different way. He believes that mailing lists are undervalued when it comes to connecting with your customers. Again, Laura Elizabeth mentioned this very same thing. She built a mailing list 2 years before she launched her course, and she said that people were chomping at the bit to get her course before she released it. So, and really all of the advice that we've talked about here in this episode across all of season 6 touches on that general idea in some way or another. Listening to your customers, getting their feedback for your offerings, and having conversations with them are all ways of connecting with people. So, the third and perhaps the most important trade secret of this year, and I believe any other, is connect with people. So, to recap, the three biggest takeaways from season 6 of How I Built It are: listen to your customers, release an MVP as fast as possible, and connect with people. Now, before we wrap up, I do want to mention season 7. I am really excited. I'm working on those episodes as we speak. I'm locking in the first sponsors for the season and for the first few episodes, but I have recorded a bunch of fantastic interviews. So I'm also going to switch up the format a little bit, which is pretty exciting. Instead of I will leave the actual changes for the release. I'll leave you hanging there. But I do want to mention that the first few episodes cover a topic that I usually don't like talking about in public or ever, really. And that's all around personal health. So my first guest of season 7 is going to be Allie Nimmons. She's a freelance web designer. And we talk about a whole host of things. Like, we talk about freelancing, but then we get into the topic of mental health, what it's like to be Black and female in a white, male-dominated space. And again, it's not something that I'm necessarily super comfortable talking about, but I think we cover some important topics. So it's an important perspective that I think we haven't had on the show before. And then I'm also going to talk to Michelle Schulp of Mark Time Media. She has released a new initiative about that focuses on freelancing and fitness. So in that episode, we talk about physical health, which I think is really interesting. And then to top out that trio, I talk to Kirsten Bunch, and we talk about professional health or professional happiness by way of determining if you're ready for a career change. So we'll talk about those things leading off season 7, which is going to drop in July. So thanks so much for listening to this episode and this season of How I Built It. I really appreciate you tuning in. I also want to thank all of the guests for season 6 and the sponsors. Without all of you, this show would not be possible. For all of the show notes for this episode, head over to howibuilt.it/S6. That is howibuilt.it/S as in season, and then the number 6. If you liked this episode or any of the guests mentioned, please share this with people on social media, however you'd like. And as I mentioned, I do have a few sponsor spots still left for season 7. So if that is something you're interested in, or you know a company that you would love to see sponsor the show, let them know. They can find all the information over at howibuilt.it. And until next time, get out there and build something.